Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of A Proud Malcontent. I am Pete Bell and I am a proud malcontent. I'm trying a wee bit more relaxed atmosphere today, sitting back a bit, not leaning in quite as much as I have been in the past. Let's see how this works. I need some help relaxing today because it's been very tense over. People have been irking me again, you know. So, but we'll come to that. This is Wednesday, the 3rd of September, 2025. So that means it's the 18th anniversary of an event. It's not an anniversary that a lot of people will be aware of. But today, the 3rd of September, is the 18th anniversary of what I like to call the first Scottish government of the democratic age, because today is the anniversary of the day that the dear departed Alex Salmond changed the name of the Scottish executive to Scottish government. And I've always maintained that that was a very significant moment in the history of Scotland's constitutional struggle. It seems like a trivial thing. I mean, officially, it's still the Scottish executive, but Alex Salmond knew the power of words. He knew the importance of names, and calling it the Scottish government was just a brilliant move. It was nothing short of that. Very simple, but quite brilliant. So remember that for next year, folks. Don't worry. If I'm still around, I'll remind you. September the 3rd is the anniversary that we're talking about. What else are we talking about today? I've not been in a good mood at all because there's been various things going on, various disputes and arguments. I mean, for a start, there's this John Swinney. This is what I got up to this morning when I first opened my browser. This from John Swinney. I'm going to read it out, even though it pains me. I intend to defeat the politics of fear and division by offering a clear, principled alternative based on the decent, welcoming values that have served Scotland so well throughout my lifetime. What a load of drivel. What a load of utter drivel. It's all propaganda. It is not just propaganda, it's crude propaganda. It's glittering generalities and trigger words throughout, and nothing else. There is no substance to it whatsoever. And what really irks me, it's not the propaganda that I object to. I don't mind a bit of propaganda, but I like it to be well done. I like it to be well crafted. When it's as crude as that from John Swinney, I feel that he's insulting my intelligence. I feel that he's insulting the intelligence of everybody in Scotland. And it comes out with pap like that. What else? What else has been annoying me? Right. Okay. Well, I had this one. The other thing that's been getting on my nerves the last couple of days is Liberate Scotland. I don't know if you've heard of it. Liberate Scotland. It's three very, very fringe parties that have got together. There was supposed to be an umbrella group for all nominally pro-independence parties. But of course, as anybody could have predicted, none of the established parties were in the slightest bit interested. SNP and ALPA, the only ones that are actually showing on polling, they weren't interested. They were never going to be interested. Why would an established party allow some other organization, an organization which they don't control, why would they allow that umbrella group to speak for them? especially when with some of the things that this umbrella group and its supporters are saying. Here is an example. Amongst other things, this person says that I'm obsessed with details and procedures and whatever. And he's speaking about Liberate Scotland here, and he says, if we win, we make the rules and regulations. Doesn't that sound? That sounds just like they're planning on setting up a dictatorship. Of course, they don't make the rules and the regulations just because they've won. I mean, we're talking the hugely hypothetical situation here of Liberate Scotland forming a government. As I say, they're not even showing in the polls. So, but I presume it's Liberate Scotland he means by we, because nobody else, there's nobody else associated with it. And you can tell why when their supporters are coming out with stuff like that. If there was a campaign on at the moment, and if the unionists were paying any attention, that's the sort of thing that they would seize on, and they'd make a big issue of it. You know, oh, they're planning on setting up a dictatorship here. They're planning on tearing up the rule book. You know. As I pointed out to this chap, they won't be making the rules. The rules are laid down. Most countries have a constitution. We have the Scotland Act, which I suppose it could be said to serve in the place of our constitution. It certainly isn't a substitute for a constitution, but it's what's been imposed on us. And countries are controlled, governments are controlled by the constitution and by all sorts of regulations and procedures. There's all sorts of checks and balances in there. And a major one is the standing orders of the Parliament. And these people don't seem to think that that matters at all, standing orders. They say, no, when we win, yeah, when we win, we will just do it. It'll just be done like magic. Yeah? This is kind of what I mean about when I talk about fantasy politics, because of course this is a total fantasy. There has to be a process. There have to be procedures within that process, like introducing a bill to Parliament. That is a procedure in itself, and it's part of another procedure, and that all of them join together the process. I don't know what Liberate Scotland actually think here. I don't know what it is that they're actually planning. Well, I use the word planning very loosely. They seem to think that if they were elected, if they were to win, to put it in their terms, they could just have a press conference and say, right, Scotland's independent now. And that would be fine with everybody. Everybody would be just fine with that. No bother at all. No, that's not how it works in the real world. And quite honestly, I said at one point that they're like a bunch of ill-informed kiddies playing at politics. And I do not understand how people like Eva Comrie and Colette Walker got dragged into something like this, because they've put themselves at the mercy of these kinds of people. You know, they're going to be making comments like that. I'm deliberately not identifying the person for obvious reasons. They're going to be making comments like that during the election campaign, and their opponents are going to latch onto it. And there's no good at that point, Eva Comrie or Colette Walker saying, oh, that's Liberate Scotland speaking, that's not our party. No, They're under that one umbrella. So that umbrella organisation is speaking for them, whether they like it or not. And the way it works is that supporters of that party, not even officials of the party, supporters of the party, saying things like that, we will make the rules and regulations. That's going to be picked up, and it will blow up in their faces. It really will. And as I say, that guy is just a supporter. I don't think he's actually a member of any of the parties that are involved. They are Independence Scotland Party, the Independents for Independence, and something called Sovereignty, which I had never heard of before or since, come to think of it. Yes. That's the three parties that are involved, just to give them a wee ident there. And as I say, that guy is just a supporter. It wouldn't make any difference. What he says will be associated with the party. So it is now out there that Liberate Scotland is aiming to set up a dictatorship. They're aiming to just throw away the rule book when they get power, which will be never, but it'll still be pointed out. Not a supporter. However, as if that wasn't bad enough, I was already out at Liberate Scotland. No, I wouldn't even be talking about Liberate Scotland because they're really not significant, other than, and I'll get to that in a moment after we take a look at this. And this is official. This is a letter penned by Alan Petrie, who is the Liberate Scotland press officer, and it's ridiculous. It's a letter, an open letter, calling for the Chief Constable of Police Scotland to be dismissed. It's addressed, as you can see there, to Cabinet Secretary. Now, there is no such individual role in the Scottish government. There is a Cabinet Secretary for the UK government, but in the Scottish government, there are at present 11 Cabinet Secretaries. So it's a bit vague for a start. But let's suppose that he meant the Cabinet Secretary for Justice, Angela Constance. It would still be a daft letter because Angela Constance doesn't have the power. No Cabinet Secretary or Minister in the Scottish Government has the power to dismiss the Chief Constable. The Chief Constable is appointed by the Scottish Police Authority, and it should have been the Scottish Police Authority that this letter was sent to. And more specifically, it should have been somebody by the name of Katharina Casper, who's the chair of the SPA's Complaints and Conduct Committee. Now, I knew some of that already, obviously, but the detail on that, I checked up on the details and I confirmed details in about 5 minutes. It took me 5 minutes of research, and I found everything that I needed to know about that. Obviously, Liberate Scotland's police officer, press officer, I should say, couldn't be bothered with that, 5 minutes research. So he just went ahead and sent out this letter. It's Liberate Scotland again. Liberate Scotland doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. So why am I talking about this? I'm talking about it because It embarrasses the whole independence movement. It is an embarrassment to the whole independence movement. It makes us all look silly and amateurish. It brings the independence movement into disrepute, and we could do without it. We could do without it. So please, if you're an official of some organisation within the independence movement, for goodness sake, check your facts before you start putting stuff out there in public. Yeah, it's not that difficult. Okay? Any decent AI setup will do it for you in 30 seconds. It's really not difficult. Moving on, as I say, these are the things that have been annoying me, and annoying me quite greatly, it has to be said. But that's partly the mood I'm in. So, I don't blame these people too much. And we've had a go at SNP. We've had a go at Liberate Scotland. Actually, they've had 2 goes, so can't say I'm leaving them out. And so it's now who's left? Oh yes, Alapa. This is one that I've been meaning to look at for a while. I have something to say about. This is a meme, as we're obliged to call it, a meme from Ash Reagan, MSP, Alapa's only MSP and Holyrood leader thereby. It reads, just in case you can't see it, it reads, last time, meaning the last time there was an election, over 1 million list votes for independence were wasted. We cannot afford to let that happen again. Sorry. Because without a strong list vote for Alapa, we won't secure an overwhelming pro-independence majority in Parliament. Well, there's a cheeky wee dig at John Swinney there, which I quite like, because it does it without even mentioning his name. But it says, without Alapa, we won't get an overwhelming pro-independence majority in Parliament. The corollary of that is that since the SNP's the other party that might get some MSPs elected, in fact, they definitely will, they won't make up that majority, which is exactly the opposite of what John Swinney's campaigning for. He wants a pro-independence majority made up entirely of SNP members. In fact, all he wants is a safe working majority for his party. It's absolutely nothing to do with Scotland's cause. It's entirely about getting a secure working majority for his party. But is it another thing the thing that irritates me about this, or it makes me kind of dubious, is that for a start to claim that these independence votes were wasted. Hang on a minute, how were they wasted? What, if that presumes that they didn't count for anything? Well, everybody's vote counts for something. The fact that they're voting, that counts for something. I just don't like this idea of a vote being wasted. By that account, every vote that isn't a vote for the party that wins the election has been wasted. And that cannot be right. Nobody could say that those votes are wasted. These people were voting, presumably, for what they actually believed to be right. They were voting for the person that they wanted to represent them, or the party that they wanted to form the government. So I think it diminishes the whole democratic process by talking about votes being wasted. But there's another thing here that but it may actually be true that a strong list vote for Alapa will be what secures a pro-independence majority. That part of it might be true, but is that going to happen? That's very doubtful. Alapa's polling at the moment, I think, somewhere around 6-7%. So they might get a couple of seats, but then the SNP's set to lose perhaps 10, maybe 12 seats. This is according to the polls, which is the best information we have. So don't complain. So Alapa could well have a couple of seats by the time this is over. But what difference does it make? They won't be able to. They won't be able to do anything. It's still doubtful if there's going to be a pro-independent majority. But what others are wanting to do, what people are wanting to do, is 2026 referendum, and want to use the list vote as votes in that referendum. Now, there's reasons why that won't work, but one of them, an additional reason, which has just come up, is Ash Regan, Alapa's Hollywood leader, saying that those votes don't count. Those pro-independence votes don't count. She says they're wasted. If they don't actually get somebody elected, they're wasted. So we'll have one person saying, or on the one hand, somebody saying that those votes are going to count for independence, and then we have somebody else saying, no, those votes are wasted. They don't count for anything. Which is it? You can't blame people in the independence movement for being confused, because it's all a bit crazy. There's another point about this this whole SNP1 Alapa 2. There's several things about it. For one thing, there's the insistence from some quarters that the SNP must join in with this. Now, the SNP must start promoting this voting strategy, Alpa's voting strategy, which is intended to benefit Alpa. It's not intended to benefit the SNP at all. It doesn't help them in any way. They'll get the seats that they win. The whole SNP 1 and 2 thing doesn't, the SNP Alpa 2 thing doesn't help the SNP. So why should they join in? Why would they promote another party? They're the established party, a party of government. It's one thing for a fringe party, and I'm sorry, but Alpa is still a fringe party. It's one thing for a fringe party to do that. Fringe parties have certain benefits, certain advantages. They have the advantage that because they're fringe parties, because they're never going to be held accountable for what they're saying, because they're never going to have to deliver on what they're promising, they can pretty much say anything and promise anything. Within reason. They're liable to get ridiculed if they start promising free jetpacks for everybody, but they have that advantage that they're able to say a lot more than the party of government, or the likely party of government, or even a potential party of government. They are limited, restricted in what they can say. And Alapa missed that opportunity. They had that opportunity when they first launched. They were always going to be a fringe party when they first launched. And if they first launched and gone all out for a radical alternative to independence. They could have been the alternative party of independence, alternative to the SNP that they want to be. They're not doing it. They're not being the alternative at all. That's why they're languishing at 6-7% in the polls. But the other aspect of this is there's the wasted votes, and there's a million votes. Right, this strategy, the SNP is not ever going to join in. They're not going to promote another party. They're not going to help Alpa get a free ride into seats in Holyrood. There is absolutely no reason why they should. Perhaps if it was going to help the Scotland's cause, although I don't think the SNP leadership's much bothered about that anymore. But if I thought it was going to help Scotland's cause, if I calculated that it was going to help Scotland's cause, I'd be all for it. But I don't see how it helps Scotland's cause at all, electing two useless parties instead of one. And as far as I'm concerned, they're both useless, SNP and Alpa. Neither one of them has a credible plan for restoring independence. Neither one of them has identified the process. Neither one of them has said what they would actually do on day one to start the process of restoring independence. So I don't see any advantage in it. It does not help Scotland's cause to vote for two useless parties instead of one. There's perhaps a more troubling thing about this. I don't know that it'll work. I don't know that this strategy can work. To my mind, and I'm saying this is a feeling that I get, a sense that I get. I haven't done any calculations on this. I'm probably not qualified to do the necessary calculations. I have put this to Stephen Duncan, who comes on the show on a Sunday, statistician. But I think he's got it perhaps on his to-do list, maybe not right away. But I look at this and I think surely there's a minimum participation rate before it takes any effect. This obviously is not going to have any effect if only half a dozen people do it. But even if a relatively large number of people do it, a relatively large proportion of the electorate do it, will it work? Will it actually max the yes as the slogan that they use? Well, I don't see that it will. The participation rate would have to be very high. I feel it would have to be very high, well over 50%, for it to make a significant difference. That's not the most troubling thing about this to me. Perhaps the most troubling thing is the strategy is designed to max the yes. I'll get to that in a moment. But it is not designed to take votes away from unionists. That's not the intention. It's intended to concentrate the pro-independence votes. So it's not taking votes from the unionists. Because none of the people who are actually going to do this would previously been voting for a unionist party. That doesn't make sense. There's very few are going to come from no to yes. That would have shown in the polls before now. So what I'm thinking, and just looking at this plan, this strategy, is that it leaves the unionist vote pretty much the same, whatever it is, it doesn't touch that. But it reduces the number of unionist MSPs. In other words, it makes the parliament distinctly disproportional, which is exactly the opposite of what the voting system is supposed to do and actually has been doing since the parliament was founded. The Electoral Reform Society looked at this some years ago, and they concluded that, yes, the Scottish Parliament is proportional. It has a high level of proportionality quite consistently. If I recall correctly, is something like twice as proportional as Westminster, maybe 3 times. Obviously, that varies at different times. I should imagine at the moment that the proportionality rating for Westminster is incredibly low, because there's a heavy concentration of Labour MPs. So it's this business of the disproportionality. There's 2 points on that. One, how can this happen? If the voting system is designed to prevent it, how can it happen? If it does happen, if it can happen, would we really want it to happen? Do we want a disproportionate parliament? I know this sounds like I'm saying that the unionists should be left alone. It's not the unionists that I'm concerned about here at all. It's the parliament. Its democratic legitimacy in part derives from its proportionality. So to destroy that proportionality inevitably undermines the parliament's democratic legitimacy. And we don't want that. We need that democratic legitimacy. So I'm a bit concerned about that aspect of it, not unduly concerned, because, as I say, what the polls tell us is Alpa's not going to do any better this time round than they did last time. Maybe slightly better, perhaps enough to get a couple of MSPs. That's what the rules are telling. There's a sort of 5% threshold on the list vote. It's not an official threshold. It's a kind of an informal threshold. But parties have to get over 5% of the vote before there's a possibility of them getting a seat. I think that there must be a point to at which they're absolutely certain to get a seat. And I think that lies somewhere between 5 and 10%, perhaps around 7%. I seem to remember that figure from previously. But it's an attempt to game the system. This SNP1, Alapa 2, it's an attempt to game the system. I believe the people, I'm not quite familiar with the system, I do understand it. People who question are accused of being ignorant, they don't understand the voting system. Fine, I know exactly how it works. But there's people who know a lot more about it than me, and they say that it can't be gamed. So there must be some device in there that prevents this happening, or perhaps it just relies on the low participation factor that I mentioned earlier. Quite simply, not enough people are going to pick up on this voting strategy for it to make any difference. Because after all, who is Ash Regan speaking to when she puts that meme up on Facebook or X or whatever? Who is she speaking to? Maybe 500, maybe 1,000 people will see that. Maybe 100 will share it. All right, that gets a fair bit of penetration in the independence movement, but not enough to make a difference. People aren't going to be swayed by something like that. And there's question marks too over the whole max the yes strategy. or supermajority, getting a pro-independence supermajority. They're not getting a supermajority. There is an official supermajority, which is 2/3 of sitting MSPs. That would be 86 MSPs would be a supermajority. Nobody's going to get 86 seats under this voting system, and in the way Scotland's politics is structured. So that's not going to happen. So they're not going to get a supermajority. What they're actually talking about is a very large majority. But supermajority sounds better than very large majority. So they say supermajority. That supermajority in Parliament, by the way, isn't much use for anything. I should say, it's not required for anything. I'll get to the not use, much use in a moment. It's required for this qualified majority, supermajority is required for appointing some officials of the Scottish Parliament management board. I can't remember what it's called. And there's one other thing from the 2016 amendments to the Scotland Act. In theory, at least, a 2/3 majority can dissolve the Parliament and force an extraordinary election. But I'm not. That's not guaranteed either. They might be able to dissolve the government if they could get 86 people all voting to dissolve the government. 86 people in the Scottish Parliament agreeing on something. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often, and especially something as dramatic as basically firing the government. No, it would be nominally pro-independence MSPs, sorry, new teeth, voting against a nominally pro-independence government. So that's a bad look for a start. So I don't think that's ever going to happen. But the point is that otherwise, neither a majority nor even a very large majority is of much use. When it comes to Scotland's cause, it's of no use whatsoever. The way I normally put it is that there is nothing that you can do with 76 MSPs that you can't do with 67. 67 gives you a working majority. Anything that those 76 could do, that 67 could do. There is nothing extra that you get for all those other MSPs. You don't get any bonus points for these extra MSPs. They're not able to do anything. So the whole max the yes thing is a nonsense as well. And personally, I think looking at the other items that we've looked at today, John Swinney's banal propagandizing and the stupid things that are being said by and on behalf of Liberate Scotland. You put all that together, there's enough fantasy and fallacy in the independence movement already. Let's not add this max the yes nonsense to it, because it is nonsense. People are getting carried away with these magical solutions and the magical thinking that goes with them. Liberate Scotland is an extreme example where they are quite literally dependent on magic to make independence happen, because of nothing else. They can't tell you exactly how they're going to do it. They just say that it will happen. And the other parties aren't much better. I'm saying Liberate Scotland's an extreme example, but the other parties aren't much better. None of them are actually proposing to restore independence. John Swin is talking about a Section 30 referendum, and it's total fantasy to imagine that a Section 30 referendum could ever lead to independence. If it could lead to independence, it would never be granted. If it is granted, you can guarantee that it will not lead to independence, because if it could, it wouldn't be granted. It's really, the logic is impeccable if you think about it. So John Swin is chasing the fantasy as well. He's chasing the fantasy of a Section 30 referendum which can restore independence, and that just does not exist. And then with just as bad, Alapa is talking about negotiations with the UK government. If the UK government turn up, but why would they? This is an election, not a referendum. And even if, as Alapa are proposing, a majority of nominally pro-independence MSPs was to count as a mandate for independence, which it won't. But if it was to count as a mandate for independence, then the UK would simply wouldn't recognise it. They just wouldn't. We would be saying, or Alapa would be saying on the behalf, this is a mandate for independence, and Westminster would just say, no, it isn't. That was an election. It wasn't a referendum. And besides, you didn't get over 50% of the vote. The nominally pro-independence parties didn't get over 50% of the vote. So it can't be a mandate for independence. And besides, not all of those votes count as votes for independence. Think about it. Votes for the SNP aren't votes for independence. They're votes for a Section 30 request. Votes for Alapa are not votes for independence. They're votes for negotiations with Westminster. So the unionists could quite reasonably argue that those aren't votes for independence. Well, there's no way you get a majority of votes for independence if the SNP and Alapa are both discounted. That only leaves you really with Liberate Scotland. And they're not even shown in the polls. So we're never going to get that pro-independence majority because none of the parties are actually standing for independence. The unionists would just turn around and say, no, you're all standing for different things. All these parties are standing for different things. They're not all standing for the one thing. They're not all standing for independence. They're all standing for different things. So you can't count all the votes as being for the one thing. There are so many arguments that the unionists could make to knock down the idea of a de facto independence referendum, which is part of a very big part of the idea, of the reason, I should say, why a de facto independence referendum is a very bad idea, because it simply won't work. It won't lead to independence, because independence requires more. To be conclusive, it requires more, and we want it to be conclusive when it happens. Even sort of 53, 54, 55% in a de facto referendum isn't nearly conclusive enough, because it's not all a vote for the one thing. If all the parties had exactly the same manifesto commitment on independence, then it might be possible, it would be reasonable to say it was all a vote for one thing. but they've all got different policies. They've all got different manifesto commitments on this, and none of them connect to independence. So it just isn't going to count. It's not going to lead to independence. It's too weak. It will not be conclusive. It will lead to years of arguments. There is an alternative. I've been commending the alternative for several years now, and that is to make the election a de facto referendum on the legislative competence of the Scottish Parliament. And there you go. I've already lost half of whatever audience I had because it's already too complicated. Or this is what people tell me anyway. They say it's too complicated. People don't understand the Scottish UDI plan because it's too complicated. Because it isn't that dumbed down, massively oversimplified vote for me, vote for independence. That it's not dumbed down to that extent. So the people supposedly don't understand it. I disagree. People are perfectly capable of understanding it. Whether many will take the trouble to try and understand it is another matter, because people tend to be a bit lazy in their thinking, a cognitive indolence there, and they latch on to the simple ideas. Simple ideas like SNP 1, ALAPA 2, or for that matter, SNP 1 and 2. Any of these voting strategies, they're great, they're simple, easy to understand, latch on, support that. Even the UN initiative, the Salvo Liberate UN initiative, Liberation Scotland UN initiative is fairly easy to understand. It's having Scotland declared a colony or a non-self-governing territory. Even then, people mistake it. They think it's going to lead to independence. It will not on its own. It requires an internal process as well. But people latch onto these simple ideas, this simplistic ideas. That weakens the independence movement, because people put their energies and their resources into these nonsense projects, futile initiatives, and that sucks. It's sucking the life out of the independence movement. It's leaving the independence movement paralyzed. It has been paralyzed for the past going on 11 years. So it's important. It matters. It matters. All these little things, they're all eroding the foundations of the independence movement. They're all subtracting from it, diminishing it. It simply doesn't have the power. It's not realizing the potential of its power. And the independence movement, if you think back those 10, 11 years, 12 years, the independence movement, or the Yes movement, as we called it then, was one massively powerful thing. Look at what it did. You know, it doubled the vote for independence by some accounts, or almost doubled it. That was down to the Yes movement. That was down to their campaign and down to the sheer numbers and the sheer amount of hard work that was put in. That's the only reason. It's not because there was a great strategy laid down by the SNP. There was a good strategy laid down by Yes Scotland, but SNP went its own sweet way and overruled Yes Scotland all the way down the line. But it wasn't because it was simply because of the number of feet on the streets. That's what brought us so close in the 2014 referendum. But we don't have that anymore, and the SNP doesn't have it anymore, just because it's the same thing that the SNP relied on. I realised years back, when I was a member of the SNP, that they were renowned for having this terrific election machine, an election winning machine. And I realised fairly early on that there was no machinery there. There was no machinery. There were no clever people sitting in SNP HQ devising all these plans. No, the SNP beat the other parties, won over the other parties, simply because of the numbers that they put on the street. And they're not going to get that ever again, I suspect. So where does that leave us? Where does it leaves us in the place where that causes me to be in a bad mood, because it means the independence movement just isn't realizing its potential. It isn't using its power. In order to use its power, the independence movement would have to combine. And I use the word combine because I will not use the word unite. I'm not talking about them uniting. People talk about the pro-independence parties uniting, and that is yet another bit of nonsense that's being peddled within the independence movement. The political parties are not going to unite. If they could unite, they wouldn't be separate political parties in the first place. They're not going to unite. No party is going to give up its identity and its voice to some umbrella organization. I've mentioned this already this afternoon. No party is going to do that, or no established party. The fringe parties do it because inexplicably they imagine that there's some advantage in it for them. There isn't, as demonstrated earlier on. All Liberate Scotland's promising to do is wreck the reputations of some good people. Yeah, I'll say no more than that. It could wreck the reputations of some good people. And we're not even into the independent, we're not even into the election campaign yet. I suspect it will get a lot worse once we're in that campaign. And once Liberate Scotland starts speaking on behalf of these people and saying some very irresponsible things, if what we've seen today is anything to go by. I use the word combine. I take that from Alexis de Tocqueville, the French historian who wrote in the 19th century, early 19th century, late 17th, early 19th. He wrote about American democracy, and he talked about the power, the knowledge of how to combine. The knowledge of how to combine was how you put it. And if that is lost, democracy depends on it. He said from that knowledge, all other knowledge depends. And so it's the knowledge of how to combine. We had that knowledge back in 2012. We had it in skip loads. The knowledge of how to combine. We've lost that. You could blame a lot of things for the independence movement losing that cohesion, but there's one overarching reason, and that is time. Because any organization, absent very good leadership, any organization will start to factionalize and fragment over time. It's an inevitable tendency for all organizations of a certain size. Once they get big enough, they tend to be, their natural tendency is to split into smaller groups. And the only way that can be avoided or prevented is by good management. So up until close to the vote, up until summer 2014, the Yes movement had fairly good management. We had people at the local level managing Yes groups, and we had organisations like Business for Scotland that were very well run. So we got that cohesion, and we got that cohesion not least because there was no power trying to break it. There was no tendency for it to break. We all had that focus on that yes vote. We had a purpose. We had unity of purpose. After the vote, we lost that. We lost both the effective management, and it has to be said, Alex Salmond was a very major part of that effective management because of he was a clever strategist, and he handled the political side of things very well, while the Yes movement handled the campaigning side of things. So we've lost that. We've lost that knowledge of how to combine, and it's because of time. And it's very difficult to get that back. Very difficult. Once these factions have formed, it's very difficult to get them to come together for anything. But it needs, as we had in 2014, it needs for there to be that single purpose that everybody can reach out to. It's not everybody holding hands. It's everybody reaching out to something that's in the middle and that they can all hold on to. They don't even have to speak to each other. I'm not asking them to kiss one another and cuddle one another, even dance with one another. If they all reach out and touch the one thing. And it's no good saying independence, because that is too vague. It's defined differently by different. It's not tangible enough. Getting a yes vote in September 2014, that was something tangible. We had that to aim for. Just saying independence, that doesn't. It might, again, if there is an actual possibility of independence being restored. For example, if one of the nominally pro-independence parties was to come up with an actual proposal for restoring independence, an actual plan, a credible plan. But none of them have. None of them have. As things stand, Scottish UDI is the only actual plan that's on the table. And the idea for that was that all the nominally pro-independence parties would reach out and hold on to that manifesto for independence, which is part of the Scottish UDI plan. That then we would have that unity of purpose. Unity of purpose to restore to the Scottish Parliament the powers over constitutional affairs that it should have had all along. It should have had those powers. Those powers belong with that Parliament. There is no Parliament in the world, no national Parliament in the world that doesn't have powers over its own constitution. It's madness to even suggest such a thing. So asserting that legislative competence in constitutional affairs is absolutely vital. It's the key. That legislative competence opens something up, and none of the politicians, none of the parties are even talking about it. And time is running out. The clock is ticking, and it's ticking for me as well. because we're fast approaching finishing time. I'll be back on Sunday at 10 a.m. And joining me will be Stephen Duncan again. And I know he's got something, I know he's got something quite interesting lined up, but I can't remember what it is. For the moment, I'll say goodbye.